Yeah, welcome, everybody tonight to this talk. I hope you find some of it of interest to you. Tories, tolls, and Rapparees in North Louth. Bertrand de Verdun motte. The Normans came to Dundalk around about 1170, and Bertrand de Verdun was the man who was given Dundalk by Prince John, later King John, and de Verdun established his caput or his castle on what we now know today as Cuchullin's Mount or Castletown Mount. And the Verduns defended this area and built a big castle. And this castle here behind you, which you can still see in Dundalk, is known as Castle Bellew. The Bellews replaced the de Verduns, and the Bellews built a castle and gave their name to the whole area known as Castletown today. Now, the Normans were very powerful. They had very superior weapons to the native Irish. They were colonizers. They wanted to take over the country and to make it profitable for themselves. And they did so for about 150 years. But around about 1314, 1315, Scotland and England were at war, and Robert Bruce, who was the King of Scotland or the putative King of Scotland, sent his brother over to Ireland as a sort of a third front, so to speak, against the King of England, King Edward. Edward Bruce came to Ireland in 1315, and he wreaked havoc and chaos and confusion in Ireland. He was invited over to Ireland by the O'Neills, or so they say. This is what they call fake talk. He was invited over, but really, Robert Bruce forced his brother to go. He was invited over by the O'Neills, who fought with Edward Bruce for 3 years and devastated the country. Edward Bruce was killed at Faughart, and the slide here shows you what remains of the settlement, the substantial settlement at Faughart. Edward Bruce was killed in 1318. Now, the Norman colonization, the Norman colony, which had been relatively successful in Ireland and hadn't conquered the whole country, but had conquered the parts that they considered worth conquering, which were the Midlands, and particularly the southeast and the coastal area running up to Lake Cal in County Down and up to Carrickfergus in County Antrim. However, after Bruce, there was a combination of events: the terrible slaughter of Edward Bruce, the terrible weather that accompanied his time here, the famines that also accompanied his time here, meant that the Norman colony was devastated as a result of Bruce. And in effect, the Norman colony went into decline. Gradually, the native peoples decided or crept back into the places that the Normans were now no longer able to hold, and spread out again across the country. Most of the people, most of the natives who had kept their land were in the upland areas, the areas that the Normans wouldn't have considered very important. But the natives, as I say, came down from the mountains and spread throughout the areas that were in the lowlands that had now been vacated by the Normans. They moved from the mountains down into the flat lands vacated by the Normans. And here we see the uplands over Dundalk, which lay before the Gaelic Irish as they started to reclaim their patrimony, so to speak. The Normans around Dundalk decided that Dundalk was worth defending. And as a result, they built this huge castle here to defend North Louth against the incursions of the Gaelic chiefs. This castle here was built by one of the de Verduns, Rapparees de Verdun, and remained a battlement or a bastion of Norman and English presence in North Louth up until the time of Cromwell. Cromwell's forces, Cromwell wasn't here himself, but Cromwell's forces destroyed this wonderful castle, and the Bellews never resided here again. And this was a great shame, but anyway, that's what happened. Now, when the native people were coming, traveling down from the mountains, they followed two main routes into Dundalk. One of them was the Sli Miodhluachra, and the Sli Miodhluachra was an ancient road that ran from Tara up to Dunseverick in County Antrim, and a by road or a slip road or a junction of it was Ballach Mór na Faya, which is the great road of the Fuse, and that was the road that most of the Gaelic chieftains who attacked Dundalk and attacked County Louth in the 14th and the 15th century as the Irish began to reclaim their patrimony. The Dundalk was a favorite place for them to attack because it was so close to Ulster. It was also very accessible. Once they attacked Dundalk, they didn't have very far to run up the side of the mountains and to get away from the Normans or the English who would have attacked them. On your screen here, you also have what's called the Plaster River, or the 3 Mile water. And this was the area where an awful lot of the Irish came down from the mountains of South Armagh, in through Plaster River, into the gap of Forkill, and down through Faughart Hill and into Dundalk. And the local people will know that this is a very short, a relatively short distance. In a couple of hours, you can be down into the mountains, sack Dundalk, and be back up in the mountains in jig time. If you went up into the mountains, it was much easier to travel up in the mountains because not only did you you were above the tree line, as you can see here on the diagram, but you also had great visibility to see who was following you and who wasn't following you. It's important to remember that the countryside at this time was covered with trees. This is hard for us to imagine because we have denuded, or should I say, the country has been denuded of trees. The amount of Ireland that is forested is somewhere in the region of 5%. A hugely industrialized country like Germany, for example, has more than 30% of it in forest. But that's, as I say, is another story. Okay, now, the next slide shows you again Dundalk, and it shows you Forkill. This is going to be an important gap for our study because this is where the Irish escaped through. And another place that will figure in our story here is Jonesborough. Jonesborough, very close to Sli Miodhluachra and in between the gap of Sli Miodhluachra and the Carlingford Mountains. Now, Kilnasaggart, you might wonder why this is here, but I hope it will become clear. Kilnasaggart is a very unusual place, a very special place, and it's a place that's right on the border between Armagh and County Louth. It's a place that has stones or has symbols or has relics going back into the 8th century. And you can see these Ogham stones here, which are the oldest Ogham stones in the country. And they are a sign that there was great activity here, that this was a very special place. It was a monastery, it was a place of hospitality, but it was also a sanctuary for those fleeing justice. And religious houses were often located at meeting points and at wet point sites, in other words, where there was a well or where there was a river. And Kilnasaggart filled all those conditions. Now, Kilnasaggart, this picture here is taken from the field where these Ogham stones are. And you can see in the far distance a castle. And this castle is called Moira Castle because now I've just lost my slide here. It's called Moira Castle because of the Magherie. Magherie is the Irish word Magherie or Magherie for a plain, and we'll see the importance of that in a minute. Now, this is the Sli Miodhluachra, which goes through Kilnasaggart. Now, Kilnasaggart is on the road to Forkill. Now, some of you might be familiar with this picture here. This is the railway bridge at Kilnasaggart. This is the railway bridge that was more blown. It was the most frequently blown up bridge during the Troubled times. Overlooking this bridge is the Magherie Castle. This road here is the road up to Forkill. Oops, oh, I've lost it again there now. Up to Forkill. This road here is known as Johnston's Road because this was the road that Don Johnston, who was a Tory hunter, used to use frequently. And this road here leading to the bottom right-hand corner of the map, this was the road to Jonesborough. The road to the left here, the road to Forkill, was the old Sli Miodhluachra, because the old Sli Miodhluachra, you will notice here, is going up. And the earlier forms of the Sli Miodhluachra always stayed up on the upland areas. By being on the upland areas, they were in dry areas, they had good visibility, and they were above the tree line. So Kilnasaggart is very important because Kilnasaggart was a place where an awful lot of people who were fleeing the law used to get justice, used to get sanctuary, used to get hospitality. Now, this map here is the map of the Magherie Castle. And the Magherie Castle is a castle that was built by Lord Mountjoy. And Lord Mountjoy was fed up with all these native Irish coming down to Dundalk and pillaring Dundalk and pillaging Dundalk. And he also said, I'm going to stop these people. So he built the Magherie Castle because this was going to be his way of getting into Ulster, because the Magherie Castle and the Sli Miodhluachra and the Gap of Forkill were the entrances into Ulster. Now, we're slightly diverging here, but at the same time, it'll be parallel to what we've been talking about. Next slide here is the saucer of Gullion. Now, this is the ring of Gullion. And the important thing to note here for our purposes is you have Forkill once again here. Forkill is a fault or a gorge in Gullion through which the Tories and the Rapparees used to go. But another very important gorge or fault was this line here going from Camlough Lake all the way down to Ravensdale. And this will figure largely in our talk tonight. And the reason this is because this being a fault, the fault was caused by plate tectonics, where the ground shifted as a result of volcanic activity. And when you have volcanic activity, you have subsidence, but you also have uplift. Some areas are uplifted, some areas fall. The Ring of Gullion rose up. The Camlough Fault descended or fell down, and therefore it became a fault, and therefore it became a rootway. It was the only relatively reasonably flat area of North Louth, South Armagh, and it proved to be a perfect place to build the road that went into the north of Ireland or into the 6 counties. Now, here you have the Camlough Fault again that we talked about just earlier on. And down here you have these rocks here, which are igneous rocks, tertiary igneous rocks, and granodiorite. And those are impermeable rocks. They don't allow the water to go through them, and therefore they cause an awful lot of lakes and bogs. Down here, this is in County Louth, you have the blue rocks, and they're limestone rocks. They are permeable rocks. They allow the water to go through them, and limestone will feature a little bit later in our talk. Over here on the right-hand side, you have a map of Ireland, the northern part of Ireland, and the yellow streak here are the Drumlins. These are the Drumlins that impeded traffic between the north of Ireland and the south of Ireland, and in large measure, maintain the isolation of the north of Ireland from the south of Ireland. And some would say they are still fairly isolated and they're 2 different countries. But in between, you can see here, this is the Gap of the North. This is, if you like, the fault, the Camlough Fault, through which the roads that we will look at in a few minutes will run. Now, we move on now to this map here, and we talked about the Magherie Castle. The Magherie Castle is located here, and you can see the 3 mile water here. This is the Plaster River that goes through Kilnasaggart. Over here on this side, you have the 3 mile water, and this is the gap of Forkill. So Forkill is an important place for our Tories to be coming through down here, past Faughart, down into Dundalk, getting what they can, and then charging up the hill and away up to Forkill and back into South Armagh. And as a result of the attacks by the Tories and the Rapparees and the Gaelic Irish, Dundalk has practically no medieval monuments whatsoever, no medieval remains whatsoever. If you compare, say, Lawrence's Gate in Drogheda with the structure that represents, and compare what there is left in Dundalk, the reason partly is because the town was devastated time and time and time again by attacks by the natives. But also, it should be said that Lord Limerick, who took over the town in the beginning of the 18th century, demolished the walls of what was left of the walls of the town. Now, we talked about Lord Mountjoy and setting up the Moira Castle, and the reason he set up the Moira Castle here was that kept a view. He had a view here of all that was going on in South Armagh, as you can see from this. Okay, so now he wants now to push into Ulster, so he pushes down past Kilnasaggart, he pushes down into Ulster, and he pushes down into Jonesborough, or down towards Jonesborough. Jonesborough wasn't here at the time. And those of you who know the topography of this area know that you're going downhill. You're going downhill. You're going down from about 400 or 500 feet where Jonesborough is, down to effectively about maybe 50 feet, 100 feet above sea level. And here you have the flat land. Here you have the Ravensdale Fault. Here you have the low land that they're trying to put the road through. But you can see also in this map that you have an old lake. This is a lake. This area all along here is full of water. And down here you have a water fort. That you have a fort to protect the water to protect the fords that they are putting over the water. And over here on this map you have the Magherie. The Magherie, as I mentioned earlier on, is the Irish word for a plain or a flat area. And this is a bog. This was a bog area here, and this was very difficult for the English to get through because you had to build causeways, or embankments, or and we'll push on to the next slide and we'll see. And this is where you better go back. Yeah, and this is what you would have found in the Ravensdale, the road from Jonesborough, or from Flurry Bridge, which is very flat, as you know. The road from Flurry Bridge all the way into Newry, past Gullion, past Clog, and into Newry. This was boggy, practically impenetrable land. And you can see what I've written up here at the very when Lord Mountjoy's men came along here, they found that the ordinary passage was could only be crossed by a broken causie beset on both sides with bogs, where the Irish might skip, but the English could not go. And on either side of this causie was short shrubed woods in which the rebels lying might discharge their volleys without dangers to themselves. So you have this causeway here. Remember, you have the whole area covered with wood. It's a very wooden area, and therefore anybody who's marching along on the causeway here can be picked off relatively easily by the local people who don't want them to be annoying them, and as a result, this is something that the English had to do something about. So what they proceeded to do was to cut down the forests as much as they could, or wherever they could, and then they rolled the forests the forest into logs of wood, and they built this causeway here, or a causeway along. Now remember what I said, that this area is all wooden. Okay, so it's a case of cutting the wood down and then building your causeway, and then cutting more wood down and building more causeways. So it's a very, very laborious activity, but that was the only way they were able to get through the Camlough Fault. And this is another example of the cause. This is a causeway here, or a wooden embankment. The Irish name for the causeway is a Togher. That is a fairly common name around the area. I think there's a Togher even in County Louth. And this is your example here, how when you have very flat land, you build up the land around it, you raise the land, which is a very difficult thing to do. It takes a long time. This is a causeway that we will have a look at in a few minutes later on. And here you have, once again, you have the town of Dundalk. This is, you have Magherie Castle here. You have the 3 Mile Water, the Plaster River here. You have the escape route, so to speak, through Forkill, which Lord Mountjoy tried to close off with his with the Magherie Castle. And then down here, you have into the Magherie again, into the plain. You have the causeways here that the English built in an attempt to try to get over and open up the countryside and give them access to Newry and give them access eventually into the Blackwater and over to attack O'Neill in Dungannon. Now, the Ulster Plantation is another. The Ulster Plantation followed from Lord Mountjoy's success over Hugh O'Neill. Hugh O'Neill departed the flight of the Earls and the Ulster 1607, and the Ulster Plantation started in 1610. Now, some of the Gaelic people benefited from the Ulster Plantation. We don't like to think of that as a general narrative, but some of for example, Sir Turlough McHenry O'Neill, he was a first cousin of Hugh O'Neill. He didn't back Hugh O'Neill. He fought against Hugh O'Neill at the battle. He didn't go to Kinsale. And as a result, he was honoured, or he was promoted by Queen Elizabeth, and he was given a knighthood, Sir Turlough McHenry O'Neill, and all was well. And he was given all of South Armagh as a gift. Well, he wasn't so much given as a gift, but he was allowed to hold on to it. That's an important thing. It's important because as a result of his being allowed to hold on to South Armagh remained a Gaelic stronghold. That's the reason why South Armagh is a Gaelic stronghold to this day. But there's a twist in the story, as there usually is. Sir Turlough McHenry passed on. His son, Turlough, took over from him. One of Turlough's kinsmen, a relation, Sir Phelim O'Neill, rose up in rebellion in 1641. In actual fact, Phelim O'Neill rode down through Forkill, sacked the Magherie Castle that we saw, devastated it because the locals hated Magherie Castle, and it was never used again after 1641. But when the O'Neills got involved in 1641, all the land, or most of the land that the O'Neills had been given in 1610 was taken away from them. Okay, so then we come on then to Sir Ogie O'Hanlon. He owned most of the land in South Armagh. He owned it, but the O'Neills were the top dogs, so to speak, so that they worked side by side. Sir Ogie O'Hanlon was a brother-in-law he had married O'Neill's sister, but he didn't go with O'Neill either. He refused to join up with O'Neill. He allied himself with Bagnall, and as a result, he was knighted, and he was promoted, and he was given he was allowed to retain his lands. But there's a twist in the story here too, because his son got involved with a chap called Sir Caer O'Doherty. Sir Caer O'Doherty was the Lord of Inishowen. Sir Caer O'Doherty was known as the Queen's O'Doherty. He was he helped the English establish themselves in Derry. But Sir Caer O'Doherty was a bit of a hot-headed bloke, and he was easily rose, so to speak. He was one of many of the Gaelic lords. He ran an autocratic system. He didn't like being contradicted, and when he fell out with the English decided it was trying to get rid of him. So he rose up in rebellion. But when he did rose up in rebellion, Sir Ogie O'Hanlon's son joined him. And when Sir Ogie O'Hanlon's son joined him, and Sir Caer O'Doherty was killed in 1608, Sir Ogie, the land of Sir Ogie was taken as an excuse, so to speak, as a result of Sir Ogie's son getting involved, and Sir Ogie O'Hanlon was deported, or Sir Ogie's son was deported to Sweden. Now, the reason I'm saying all of that is Redmond O'Hanlon was one of the Tories, and he was a grandson of Sir Ogie, and he was one of the most famous Tories that there was. And I'm not going to talk much more about him because we could be here for an hour and a half and we wouldn't be finished with him. But he has gone down in song and in story as one of the greatest, and if you want to find out more about him, you're going to have to read up about it, because I'm going to run short of time. Now, as I mentioned 1641. After 1641, you had Cromwell came over, and there was the devastation of Cromwell, the devastation of Drogheda, and the Catholic forces collapsed. And really, the only hope for the Catholic forces, as they saw it, was to develop small cells, small groups of where they could strike. The small group would strike, but they wouldn't be able to leak on the bigger picture, so to speak, because there would only be a very small group of people that would be involved with them. Now, after the Tories came along, Charles II was the King of England, became the King of England in 1685. He was deposed by William in 1688, and he called on the Tories and the Rapparees. The Tories and the Rapparees, if you like, were first cousins of each other. The Tories were there earlier. The Rapparees were later on. To attack the people who had taken any land that the Irish should have had, and as a result of that, they got a legitimacy, so to speak, and they got a new lease of life as a result. Okay, now we were talking about Charles II, and we were talking about him saying, "Go attack the people who have taken your land." And the reason he was saying that is because his crown was taken from him by William of Orange. And William of Orange, if you like, this was a coup d'etat. This was a crowd taking over, replacing the legitimate king. And Charles decided that he would come and come to Ireland, because that's where he came. We went to France first of all, and then he went to Ireland because he said he thought he would have more support in Ireland. And this picture here is one of Schomberg. Schomberg was William's great general, and Schomberg came to Ireland, and he came to Dundalk. And the reason I'm showing this slide is partly to show you that this is where Schomberg had his camp in Dundalk, but I'm also showing it to you to show you these two roads here. This is obviously the town of Dundalk. This is the road to Carlingford, and this was the Sli Miodhluachra. This was the old road to Newry from Dundalk. And this here is, the local people will be familiar with Nicky Arthur's shop on the Dowdall's Hill. But this Nicky Arthur's shop was at the junction of the road here, which is called the Doyle's Fort Road today. This was the Sli Miodhluachra going up through South Armagh. And we shall see that again later on. Okay, now, and again, Schomberg and King William had great trouble when they were going to get through the Magherie, going through the causes. Do you remember we talked about the Ravensdale Fault, the Camlough Fault? The same thing applied to him. And they had to build causes. They had to build, because they wanted to bring their heavy machinery. They couldn't bring the heavy machinery over the mountains. So they had to come through the Ravensdale Gap here. And again, you had to have the causes here, all the way along here. But remember, at this stage, most of the ground had been cleared. Most of the trees had been cleared, but you still had bogs on every side of you. And if the Irish, I mean, James was advised to attack King William as he was coming through the causeways here, because he was in a very vulnerable position. Because if the people were, if the army was attacked on the causeway, or if they cut the causeway, the whole army would have been devastated. But James's generals felt that a part of William's army would come through the Ravensdale Fault, but the other part of the army, the infantry, would go over the mountain through the Forkill Gap, up down through the Magherie, up where the Magherie Castle is, and then encircle James's troops. So he didn't want this to happen. So James withdrew to the Boyne, and we know the rest of it. Now, after the Battle of the Boyne, William established himself as the King of England and the King of Ireland, and effectively, this is the beginning of the 18th century. This is the beginning of peace, of a kind anyway, in Ireland. And the new administration decided that they were going to start the real job of colonization and to start using up the resources of the country. And one way they were going to do this was to build roads. And one of the first roads they built, well, one of the most important roads, and one of the most important local roads anyway, was this road here, the road in green, and this was the road from Jonesborough. Now this is, you will notice here that this road is going to the right of Faughart. This is the Sli Miodhluachra that we started off our talk with. This is the Gap of the North. This is Magherie Castle that we spoke about. This is our old friend Forkill, the Gap of Forkill. Now this area was still, even though you now had William in charge and you now had a new administration, this area here was still infested with Tories and Rapparees, and they made life very difficult. You had two people who were very involved in keeping those people or attacking those people. One was Don Johnston, and another was a man called Malcolm MacNeill. He was the local landlord here, and he made a great deal of money by capturing the Tories. And in the grand jury records of Johnson and MacNeill, they got regular payments of £25 for every head of Tory that they managed to get. So gradually they established a bit of peace, but not really peace, because this essentially remained Ulster, whereas to the right of Faughart Hill was essentially Leinster, and this was an area where there was a lot more peace on the right-hand side of Faughart Hill than there was on the left-hand side. Now this area here, Jonesborough, is a very straight road, as you can see, and on my left-hand side, you can see how straight it is. This is taken from the top of Faughart Hill, and you can see that this road ran straight away, all the way into Dundalk. The only reason that there was a break in the road here is when the railway was put here in the middle of the 19th century. But the road was as straight, as they say, as straight as a gun barrel. But you can also see from here that some of the parts of the road were very steep. And this proved to be partly the downfall of this road, because while it was straight, it was very difficult to get up and very difficult to get down. And because it was very difficult to get up, carriages or travel was liable to be attacked very often, and that wouldn't be a good thing for the commercial point of view. Over here you have the three houses of the McNeil's family. This is Strandfield, where sometimes you might go for a cup of coffee. This was where Malcolm McNeil hung out. Over here is Mount Pleasant. This is another McNeil household, as is Faughart House here. Now, this is the road from Jonesborough all the way, the straight as a barrel road from Jonesborough. This is the 4 Mile House. This is the Flurry Valley, and this is the Flurry Bridge. And this is Moira Castle once again. And over here you have Forkill. And one of the reasons why they built the Turnpike roads, or they built the roads, or Jones built a road, was because they wanted to build barracks. Remember, you still had plenty of Tories rambling around, and the local people supported the Tories. Now, maybe they didn't want to support them. Maybe there was a little bit of elbow pulling to get support. But the bottom line was that the local people gave them support. Without the support of the local people, they wouldn't have been able to survive. This is a picture. This is a map of Jonesborough, and this is where the barracks was built here. This is a picture of the old barracks, and it was stationed in what was the parochial house in Jonesborough. And later on, there was another barracks built here. You can see this one here, and this had a great view over into Forkill and into South Armagh. And you will remember that Moira Castle was destroyed by Sir Phelim O'Neill, but they still needed a barracks here. And this is, if you like, the replacement of the barracks. Now, some of you might remember the New Inn. This is a road. This is a junction here. This is the junction. This is the old road, the straight road, the road that Jones went the road from Jonesborough, and this was the old road, the old Newry road. And along this area here is known as the New Inn, and this was the New Inn here, and this was a turnpike, and in the 1730s, the authorities were trying to improve merchandising and trying to improve the quality of the roads, and they built the Turnpike Road from Dundalk to Newry and up to Banbridge, and that started off in 1733. And the Turnpike was, if you like, it was unusual at the time. It was a government-sponsored scheme, and it was financed by the government, and the government were paid in the form of debentures or in the form of loans, where they were guaranteed a yearly payment for the money that they put into the Turnpike roads. But the Turnpike roads were pay roads, so to speak, and a lot of people didn't really like paying for roads when they could go on a road without paying for it. And a lot of people when they were this is the Jonesborough, this is the road to Jonesborough. This is Faughart Hill again. But a lot of people went up the road to Jonesborough, but again were being attacked, as I said earlier on, and they began to start building roads to the right of the Turnpike Road. And you can see that these roads to the right are twisty, windy roads. If you're like, this is a sign of a road that's not a planned road, whereas a planned road like a turnpike is a straight as a die there. Now, we're coming now. This is once again, this is the Jonesborough Road here, and these roads. This is the Carlingford Road, and the roads are starting to develop off the Turnpike Road. And this particular road here is an important road insofar as it'll figure a little bit now of what we're going to say. Notice here you have 43. You have the 43 Turnpike here. You have the 43 milestone here. The 43 milestone is here, and the 43 milestone is over here. These roads, by 1777, were in competition with each other. Now, this milestone here was in the middle of this road. This milestone is now over here. Just, can you see that on the screen? This is over here. And the reason for that is this road is no longer here. This road has disappeared. This is this road here. This road is at the back entrance to Mount Oliver or to Mount Pleasant. This is the main Newry road today. This road goes through here. This is the Bog Road, which is a small road that links up with the Thistle Cross here. This road here was the road that an awful lot of people took because they didn't want to use the turnpike, didn't want to have to pay for a fee, didn't want to be attacked on the road. So they went through little byroads that were byroads back in the day, but eventually became important roads. This is a map here. This is the road here that I'm talking about. You just see the cursor here. This is the road here that I'm talking about. It crosses over here, crosses the Bog Road here. This is the milestone, and it crosses over. This is the road here. This became the main road to Dublin. This is the main road from Dublin to Belfast. Now, and because it had to cross again, you are coming to, this is very, very boggy area. Even though this is limestone based, it is still a very boggy area, and you had to have causeways, you had to have bridges built to enable you to get over the river. We have this slide already, and this slide here was known locally as the Red Gullet Bridge. Known locally because this was where an awful lot of highwaymen, a lot of Tories by any other name, stopped and robbed the mail coach that went from Dublin to Belfast. Just farther along this particular road, you have this lime kiln, and this along here. And remember, I told you in an earlier slide that the basic substructure here was limestone. Lime was very important here. There were up to 40 lime kilns in the parish of Ballymascanlon in 1800. It's probably no coincidence that the lime kiln here was built just along here, because just along here the mail coach is rising up, and if the mail coach is rising up, it means it's going slowly, and if it's going slowly, therefore it's much more easy to attack it. But on the other hand, if it's beside the lime kiln was a place that people gathered day and night. They gathered during the day because they were going to collect their lime that they were buying to bring back to their farms to make them fertile. And at night time, the lime kiln was a great place for people to gather because there was heat there at night time, where there was heat in very, very few other places. And it was a great spot for a céilí session, a great céilí area, céilíing. People gathered at the limestone, and there were many occasions of people actually dying near the lime kiln because of their clothes getting burned when they're falling asleep, or after having maybe a few too many. So we push on now. We're moving. This is the road that we've just left. This is the road here that has crossed over. It crossed over I should have mentioned the Plaster River. You might remember the Plaster River we had in Moira Castle. We're not too far away from the Moira Castle here. This is the Plaster River. We're over this river here, and we're following this road. This is the road up to Ravensdale. Can you see that? This is the road, the present road to Ravensdale. That road is still extant. This road has disappeared. There are bits and pieces of the remaining road. This road has completely disappeared. The road that we just mentioned at the gates of Mount Oliver. Now we push on up here to the Black Gate, and you'll notice here that you have, we'll just go over to this map here at this side. This is a 1766 map, and you will see that the road comes along here. It veers down here and on into the Ferry Bridge. Okay, you notice the bleach greens here. You notice Jonesborough over here. Okay, you notice, right. we'll push on. Now this is an interesting map. This is a map by a man called John Rock. John Rock was a Huguenot, and he did this map in 1760. Now he didn't do a map of County Louth. He did a map of County Armagh. The reason he did a map of County Armagh was County Armagh was full of roads because it was the most populated county in Ireland. And the landlords wanted to know where the roads were, so they asked this guy Rock. Luckily, the Rock included Ravensdale Park and Ravensdale in his map, even though strictly speaking, it wasn't in County Louth. And this is the first cartographic. This is the first record of the word Ravensdale in a map. And it's not the first time it is written down, but it's only about this time is the area became known as Ravensdale. It was known as Mullyard, the high hill up until now. But once a landlord comes to an area, he has the power to change the names, and this is exactly what happened in Ravensdale. Also, or in here you have a pound here. The pound. This was the landlord's pound. You also, but probably most important from our point of view, you have in Jonesborough. Here you have can you see Turnpike? Can you see the Turnpike here? That's so clear. Turnpike. You can see the barracks. Okay. And this is the county bridge with County Armagh, and this is the road. This is the road from Dundalk. Okay, the road from Dundalk is going through Ravensdale Park. They're going through the ordinary road is going right beside the landlord's house. Landlords usually don't like every Tom, Dick, and Harry looking in the windows at them, so we'll see what happens. This is the road from Dundalk. This is the main road from Dublin. This is the Turnpike Road. Again, this is Moira Castle up here that we had earlier on. Now, just as a slight diversion here, you have this road here. I don't know if you're familiar with this road, but this is the road to the Flagstaff. This is the road to Narrow Water. This is just before you're crossing the county bridge, just before you're going into Gullion. And this is the road. I can't see it here because the partly is blocked. But you can see partly of the road here going down into narrow and crosses over into Narrow Water. And this was the road that was used in the 15th and the 16th centuries because the people from Dublin wouldn't go into South Armagh because they were afraid of their lives. So this road was built, and this goes through the Flagstaff. It gives us the famous view of the Flagstaff. And here you have Narrow Water. And this was the site of the famous pub, Patsy McDacker's pub in the Flagstaff, where Johnson caught a few Tories. And you can read up about Molly McDacker yourself. It's a great story. She got friendly with one of the Tories, but then he got too friendly with some other people, and she leaked on him and told Johnson where he was drinking. And she plied the Tory with drink, and Johnson came along, and that was the end of the story as far as that Tory was concerned. Now we're back. Right, so here now in 17, we are on that. Okay, we'll push on. It's a Ravensdale versus Ravensdale Park. You see all the mills. I mentioned about the bleach mills earlier on. That they were that you had loads of bleach mills. You had all of these were bleach mills. They're Drumad and Mullyard. Up here is Ravensdale Park. And you have one name here, Bradford Mills. All of these mills have all been wiped out now, are all gone. But Bradford is the only name that remains. It's on the side of the wall, up beside Arthur Dunn's house in Ravensdale Park. And this is a print by William Hinks of Ravensdale, and the activities part of this was a sort of an audio-visual for the linen industry to help people to progress the linen industry. this is a flax hole where the flax is taken out of the where it was softened up in the flax hole. It's been beaten up here, made more pliable. It's been dried up here, and over here then in this cottage here, unfortunately you can't see it, but you have the spinning wheels where they are spinning the flax into linen. Right. Now, this was the roads that we talked about earlier on, going into Ravensdale. But in 1777, between this map in 1766 and 1777, there's another change in the road. This road is no longer used here. This road, instead of going up to Ravensdale, shoots off at an angle here up, and the road now is becoming more busy. This road is being used an awful lot more than the Jonesborough Road, and as a result of it, you have a lot more industries along this road. This is the road here that's going past. This is the extension of the road that we just talked about there. And here you had lime kilns. Remember we talked about the limestone earlier on. We have the lime kilns. These lime kilns here are particularly interesting because they're associated with a fellow called Hugh Brunty. He was the father of Patrick Brunty, who was the father of the famous novelists in England, the novelists of Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre. I often think that if we had this structure here and all of the sheds and all of the courtyards that are in here, if that was in the north of Ireland, this would be a tourist haven, all built around the tradition, not so much of the Brontes, but of the Gaelic-speaking communities, because Hugh Brunty, who was the grandfather of the Bronte sister, was a Gaelic-speaking Irishman, and he was related to a famous Pádraig Brunty, who was a scribe and a recorder of manuscripts in the 18th century in this area. And we're pushing on up through the road above the Bronte lime kilns, and we're coming to another lime kiln now, and this is the lime kiln in Proleak Acres. And these roads that we talk about, that the lime was exported from County Louth up into South Armagh because they needed a lime for the fertilizers. Because as you remember, the soil in North Louth was much better than the soil in South Armagh, being limestone. So they needed the lime in South Armagh. They sent the linen down to Ravensdale, and the carts that brought the linen down to Ravensdale brought the lime up to South Armagh. In the beginning of the 19th century, obviously the roads were improving more and more, and you have John McNeill was an engineer, and he was asked to design a road to Newry, to improve the road to Newry. And this screen here shows you that. Do you remember the road that I talked to you about, the one that had the 43 milestone on it? This is this was the road here. Do you see it here? Can you see that? Now that road is now, as I said, no longer operating, and that road now is going down here. This road now goes through Feede Cross all the way along here, down as far as Enniscaya, down as far really as the lime kilns that we have just seen. So this is a huge change in the road. As I can see, you can see here that this is the 1776 and the 1777 road. This now is the new road, and this again is over the Plaster River that you will remember came down from the Magherie Castle earlier on. The 18th, okay. So that road, big change there. Now, I should say, just at the very beginning here, you have Harry O'Neill, Strandfield, all the rest of it. So just remember that. We're down here now, Harry O'Neill and Strandfield. And this is the road. This is the road from the Dowdall's Hill. This is Nicky Arthur's turn here that we talked about earlier on. This is we'll skip that. And this is This is this is a map showing you some of the houses along the road. But the reason I'm showing you this map is that this is a road that is not usually known about. This is the road. This is joining up the racecourse road here. This is Dowdall's Hill. Okay, this is Nicky Arthur's shop. Nicky Arthur's. Okay. Anyway, I'm just making the point here that there's a road here going along the racecourse road that is no longer operating, but was there way back in 1796. Okay, we're back to where we were. Now this is the new bridge. This is the Plaster River here again that we had. This is the new road. This is the new road that McNeill has built, and there's a new bridge along the road, and this is the new bridge along the road. And this is the date that it was put up, 1825. We passed people on the Newry Road or passed over that without realizing that it was built by Sir John McNeill. The roads, remember we talked about the Turnpike roads or the roads from Jonesborough being very steep? Well, these roads, the gradient was much improved. And as you can see, they dug into the side of the road to improve the gradient here. And this road here goes up to Anascea, and this is an example here of the new road that John McNeill built, and this is an example of the old road. You can see it here, and this is an example of the old road here. This was the old main road to Dublin. On to the next slide, this is known as the Togher Road. This is beside the Anascea house. This is just across the road from John McNeill's lime kiln. I don't know why it's called the Togher Road. Maybe somebody will be able to tell us. Then the next part of the road being improved was along here at Drumlins. This is known as the Curlew Bridge. This comes down from Blackgate at Ravensdale, but this was a famous place because you were going uphill here. Oops, you were going uphill here, and this is the Curlew Bridge. Lots of robberies took place here because once you crossed over the Curlew Bridge, you had to go up. And obviously the stagecoach had to slow down. And this is this is the Curlew Bridge here. You can just see this is the bridge. This is the Black Gate. This is the some of you might remember this. This is Feede Cross. This is Feede Cross here, and this was the old road to Newry. And you might just notice here, even on this is an 1835 map. You can see old road. So roads were changing their direction. Roads were changing their locations all the time, depending on maybe weather conditions, depending maybe on soil conditions, maybe depending on ownership. There could be lots of reasons. Roads were all the time changing, and we can even see that today. We have a new road now, a new motorway. Maybe that will be replaced in 10 or 15 years' time when we no longer have any diesel or whatever. And then the last, we're coming towards the end now. This is the last part of the alterations to the road that John McNeill made in through the Flurry Bridge here. And this was the old road. Some of you might remember this when we used to go up to Jonesborough, up to the market in Jonesborough, up this wee slip road up to the left. This wee slip road is in County Armagh, and Flurry Bridge is in County Louth. And we're coming towards the end now. And this is the road from the Flurry Bridge into this is the boundary of the county. This is County Armagh, and you have Carraharna, otherwise known as Carricarnan, and over here you have Gullion, and you have once again you have bogs. So it was a very difficult way to build the roads through the bogs, and that hasn't changed in the last 400 years. And this is an example of the many different roads. This is the earliest. This is the Joneses Road from 1700. This is the one in 1776. You can see them all here, 1776 and 1777. And the Plaster River once again running down through all of these roads. So I'm going to stop there because I think I have overplayed my time.
You're grand,
Okay.
Don.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, son.